This video was created during the 2023 WGA and SAG strikes. Without the labor of the writers and actors currently on strike, Star Wars Rebels and Ahsoka wouldn't exist. Learn more about the strike at the link in the description. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to our Star Wars Rebels rewatch series of videos. Today we are talking about Season 3.
Ba, 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 ba.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. This season has everything.
You sound like that character Bill Hader plays. Is it Stefan? Season 3 has everything.
Well,
Darksabers, Night Sisters.
I wrote down, listen, we've got smugglers, we've got Sith, Night Sisters, Mandalorians, the Darksaber, Thrawn, Wedge Antilles, Mon Mothma, Republic battle droids, Geonosians, Obi-Wan, and the Bindu.
That's true. All those things are in there.
It's a party.
Sith, yeah, we have the Sith holocron, and I'm trying to remember, are the Sith in there otherwise? Because there's no...
I mean, Maul.
That's true. He kind of dips in and out of being a Sith, but you're right.
Yeah.
They
the
definitely call him Darth Maul. Yeah. I'm with you. Well, before we get into the season itself, I've enjoyed starting all of these with kind of your thoughts or our thoughts and feelings going into the season the very first time we ever watched it. And again, just like season 2, like I was way more hyped for 2 than I was for 1, and I remember being very hyped for season 3.
Yeah. I remember watching some videos. It was not live, but it was a live stream from was it London Celebration?
London Celebration, yeah.
Where the big Thrawn reveal happened.
I was going to bring that up, yeah.
I remember seeing that and just seeing everybody going absolutely crazy.
I mean, I went absolutely crazy. We were not at, I remember this vividly. We were not at Celebration that year. We were watching the live streams from our bedroom. We were just sitting on the bed watching our TV in there. And I remember the organ music, and I remember the silhouette, and just being like, nah, that can't be who I think it is.
They wouldn't.
And then when he stepped out and there's a blue man in the white uniform, like I just stood up and ran down the hall and ran back.
That's no Blue Man Group.
And I had to go watch the trailer separately after they released it because I couldn't hear the rest of the trailer over the sounds of people screaming in the live stream. Like, the reaction to that trailer was phenomenal. It's one of my favorite just Star Wars fan moments of realizing Thrawn's coming back.
I'm starting to realize that we have an affinity for some of the blue characters. We've got Max Rebo, we've got Nubs.
Yeah.
Thrawn.
Blue characters. They're all great.
Cad Bane's pretty cool.
Name a bad blue character in Star Wars, I dare you.
Can't think of any.
But yeah, the reveal that Thrawn was going to be in this season had me more hyped than anything that Star Wars Rebels had done so far. And on top of that, they announced that there was going to be a new book coming.
Yeah. Well, we got to talk about Ezra's haircut.
Yeah. I mean, the trailer in general was just a great trailer.
When we recorded this for season 1, I remember saying, like, I remember him getting his haircut. And you were like, that isn't till season 3. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
The trailer was very good. I remember just seeing a lot of things of they were teasing Ezra using the Sith holocron and all that, and then it all got overshadowed by Thrawn. But there was also the YT-2400, and I remember at that panel, immediately after Dave Filoni gave us this gift of Grand Admiral Thrawn, people were like, was that the Outrider? Is Mara Jade going to be in this? And Dave was like, I knew this was going to happen. The second I give you anything, you're just going to want more and more and more.
Yeah.
But Thrawn was a big deal for me, having loved reading his books in like the 4th and 5th grade. That was just a character that was very much a major part of Star Wars for me.
I vaguely knew about Thrawn, but I had never and still have never read the Legends Thrawn trilogy books.
I think you'd like him.
Still a fan. I've read like 1.5 of the new Thrawn books, which I read Alliances because that one had like Anakin and Padme, and it like jumped around a lot. But I don't know. There's something about the Thrawn books that doesn't quite hold my attention, but I love Thrawn in Rebels.
And yeah, I want to talk about Thrawn and his use in Rebels versus how he's used in some of the books, especially more recently. I tend to think that he is used best sparingly, where he's not the focus, he is the villain, or he is someone who is seen through someone else's eyes. The newest, or the first new Thrawn book is very much through Eli Vanto and his experience with Thrawn. I think that works great. The original Thrawn trilogy, we see Thrawn through the eyes of our heroes, but also Captain Peleon. So Thrawn always had this air of mystery. Outbound Flight is through a bunch of people from the known galaxy that then fall into Chiss's captivity, but they learn to work alongside the Chiss. So it's always like, the less you see of Thrawn's inner monologue and what he's got going on, I think the more compelling he is. And they handle him very well in Rebels, I think. And upon this rewatch, I liked him even more than I liked him the first time we watched it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's start talking about our rewatch. Just what were your overall thoughts of season 3?
This one's got a lot of bangers.
It really does.
A lot of bangers. I was like going through the episode list earlier, and I was writing down a couple of my favorites, and I was like, oh man, I don't know which one of these is my top favorite. It's hard to choose.
There are a lot of very good episodes in this one. I wanted to highlight an episode. There are two that I remember just really disliking the first time we watched the series.
Oh yeah, Iron Squadron
and the When Kathu job, and they were like back to back in the release order. But I remember this time we got to Iron Squadron and I was like, oh boy, I was already rolling my eyes, like, I remember not liking this one. And
that's the one with the YT-2400 in it.
Yeah, the one with Mart Matten and his crew. Yeah, they were all named after Matt Martin and Andy Gutierrez and like people from the Star Wars show team, which is really fun.
It's a nice touch.
Yeah. But sorry, I did not like them in our first watch. And if you go back and watch our review for that episode, it's very short because I was just like, I'm going to get through this quick. But rewatching it this time, I was prepared to dislike it, and I understood it a lot more. It's still not one of my favorite episodes of the series or season, but I got it. It was like this nice checkpoint for Ezra to be with people his age, kind of like if he had never met the Ghost Crew. This is how he might have wound up.
Right.
And not only that, but the Thrawn stuff is actually really good in it. Him kind of manipulating Constantine into, I'm sure you could handle just a couple rebels with a little freighter with an Arquitens class cruiser. Like, go on, you got this.
Yeah.
And then waiting for the rebels to come in, and then here comes the Chimera. Like, that was such a great shot.
Thrawn knows exactly how to manipulate those around him in the Imperial ranks because he knows how like stuck up and kind of dumb they are.
Well, it's like he just doesn't think that way. He's like, I'm here to do a job, and he doesn't care about the glory of it all. He just wants to beat the rebels. But he still is a little bit like jabbing Constantine, be like, I'm sure a man of your talents could handle this. He's like, I mean, I could handle it. I'm Thrawn. I could do it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about filler in our last video covering season 2. But yeah, this episode, to a lot of people, probably looks and feels like filler. But again, we've kind of learned to dig deeper into such episodes and figure out what is it trying to say? How does it play into the rest of the arc of the main story? Yeah,
most filler episodes in any series are still going to teach you something about a character. And in this case, I do think it is Ezra. Ezra is very much the focus, where he's trying to relate to Iron Squadron and being like, you don't have to do this alone. You can be part of something greater. And now Mart Matten, like, he is in future episodes in the series, and he's in the comics now. He does get folded into the rebellion and becomes a part of Starlight Squadron. So I'm like, that is a cool little story for this kid who thought that he could handle it all on his own.
Yeah.
And had to learn otherwise.
It is really nice seeing Ezra talk to people closer to his age in a way that we saw characters like Sabine and Kanan and Hera talk to him in season 1.
Yeah. So yeah, it just shows some really good character growth for him specifically.
Notice how I left out Zeb because they're just giving each other jabs.
They're still
the whole
always
time.
ribbing each other.
They're always ribbing each other.
And yeah, while we talk about that, let's jump into the Kathu job as well. I will say I still hold pretty much the same opinion on that one, where I'm just like, it's okay. I really like the DT series Sentry droids, and it's nice to see them finally get proton bombs. But yeah, that episode is very much Ezra and Zeb just fighting one another when Zeb is given command over Ezra.
Oh, yeah.
So
which one is that?
That's the one where they do the heist on the ship that's like circling a vortex. With
Hondo?
Asmorgan and Hondo, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That one is one that I'm like,
Once Asmorgan showed up in that one, I was like, oh, God.
Yeah.
He's just one of those characters that... And, like, that's the point of him.
Oh, yeah. He's supposed to be gross and terrible.
Yeah. I'm just like, Hondo, come on, man. Get rid of him.
And I still continue to enjoy Hondo in this series and everything he does with his little Ugnaught crew. That he thinks he's got treasure, and at the end it's one of his Ugnaughts, and he's like, friendship is the real treasure.
Yeah. And like the rest of the Ghost crew kind of gives Ezra a little crap, and they're like, you really...
This guy again? Yeah.
Really? With Hondo again?
But to Ezra's credit, they do actually wind up with the proton bombs, and that is a running thing throughout the season that I noticed this time that I didn't notice before. They're constantly trying to get proton bombs, and they keep failing, so this is the episode where they succeed. But that's just something I wanted to bring up in the overall Season 3 discussion, because I did want to point out that, at least in the case of one episode, my opinion of that one has greatly improved. And it just highlights, I think, our own character growth.
Oh, yeah.
The way that we...
Older and wiser are we now.
The way that we view these. Did you just talk like Yoda? Nice.
Because I'm old and wise.
I like that. But now let's get into the bangers, which, like you said, there's a lot of them. And we can just dive into the overall thoughts on this season, not just specific episodes, because I want to go back to Thrawn a little bit and talk about him as a villain, and I really love him being the full arc. I think he works better than the Inquisitors, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, we're getting to see a villain who is smart and calculated and very like particular about how he wants things done, and that we don't see that very often in Star Wars, and it's nice to see. Yeah,
he's just so capable, and I think the first time I watched this, I was kind of skeptical of every time he would let them go or they would escape, and he would just be like, oh, I wanted that to happen, or they might have won the battle but we'll win the war. And I was like, Thrawn, that excuse only works so many times. But I feel like it didn't happen as many times as I remembered it. And I also understood his plans and his reasoning a lot more. Right. I think there's just one episode where Kanan and Ezra escape and he didn't want them to.
I mean, you see by the end of the season that his plan worked.
And that's like
he would have won.
He wanted the Ghost cell. He wanted Phoenix group, but he also wanted Dodonna's group. And he wanted, just like we're seeing the rebels get deeper and deeper into the rebellion, he wanted to get deeper and deeper into the rebellion and waited until the right moment to strike.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think I understood that back then, but I saw every little piece of it a little more clearly. And I was like, okay, I forgive you, Thrawn. You were doing the right thing. Not the morally right thing, but for your goals.
The episode where we go back to Hera's childhood home was a great one for Thrawn specifically, because you see how close the Ghost crew and Thrawn get to each other, and like I got chills in that episode when like they were sneaking around each other. I was like, oh my god, this makes me so nervous. And yeah, that episode just sticks out for me for being one of the first ones in the season that makes me actually scared of Thrawn.
And I like the way that he kind of plays along with Hera and she pretends to be a servant, and he plays along with that until the right moment. And he's like, come on. Yeah. We know each other. We know who we are.
He wants to learn as much as he can. So in that moment, he's like, okay, I'll play this game.
And that's one of the episodes that deals with his love of art and culture. And I don't want to say his love of it, his obsession, desire to understand it so that he can control and dominate.
Yeah.
But it works really well. And I was going to say my favorite Thrawn episode is Through Imperial Eyes, because that's another very cat and mouse game where Thrawn figures it all out at the end, and it's because of like Sabine's art, and he's able to connect all these dots, and he's like, boom, nailed it. First try.
Which episode is the one where he makes the guy get on the speeder bike?
That is an Inside Man, I think.
That might be my favorite Thrawn episode, just for that one part. You see him just being so dark and so brutal, knowing that worker is going to get on that speeder bike and it's going to explode, and he wants everyone in that room to see it happen.
And I think that that's a good moment to highlight in Star Wars Rebels, because people keep talking about Thrawn and his appearance in Ahsoka. What's he going to be like? Will he be an anti-hero or a sympathetic villain or anything like that? And you know, the books do paint him to be more just you get to the point where you understand him and his motivations, but he's still a bad guy. He still joins the Galactic Empire. He still makes a deal with the devil, Palpatine, to join the Imperial Navy, even if it is to protect his people and everything. He's putting just society on top of every other person, and he's willing to kill for it. Like,
yeah. The more you
he's a villain.
The more you get to read from someone's perspective, even if they're a villain, you can start to sympathize with them. And we've gotten so many Thrawn books and so many Thrawn stories that a lot of people do sympathize with him.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Thanos when he appeared in Infinity War and Endgame, and people were like, oh, he makes some good points. He's like, he's still murdering half of the universe. Like,
yeah.
What's the Brooklyn Nine-Nine thing? Like, cool motive, still murder. That is what Thrawn reminds me of, is that I think that at one point he was a good person, but he's kind of an illustration of you will fall down, you will fall to the dark side if you're willing to work with the Sith or the devil or whoever. Like, you can't make deals with people like that.
Space devil.
But yeah, he's still such a compelling villain to watch, because we were talking about that episode Warhead this season, where Zeb has to stop that Imperial infiltrator droid from giving away their position, and he succeeds. But every little rebel victory, Thrawn is able to turn that into a success for his goals. And he's like, now I don't know exactly where the rebel base is, but I know it has to be one of the planets where we sent infiltrator droids. So the way that he's able to turn a loss into victory is just great to see, and it's scary. I think that they're going to heighten that even further in Ahsoka.
I love the Warhead episode, mostly for the humor of it all. It's like everybody leaves and Zeb is in charge and he's there with like Chopper and AP5, and AP5 just throws so much shade at everybody, but especially Zeb, because he's like the big, dumb, strong one, according to him, and it's so funny.
I think that's another episode that people might consider filler, but again, it advances the Thrawn story, but also it's nice character-wise for Zeb, who does see himself as the brute force. He's left behind, and AP5 is just insulting him the entire time, but he's the one that comes up with a solid plan.
Yeah, he eventually comes up with a good idea, and AP5 is like, I have no words. I'm shocked that you came up with a good plan.
I want to jump back to closer to the beginning of the season and talk about Wedge, the Antilles extraction, because obviously I'm excited to see Wedge. I think that's a fun story to watch his defection. But I also have to bring up the Rebels recon episode surrounding that. And Pablo Hidalgo talked about how they almost made that Biggs.
To be honest with you, though, everybody really wanted Biggs.
In season 1, Sabine had a checkerboard pattern on her armor, and Biggs has a checkerboard pattern on his helmet, and we had thought, wow, what if she's the one who painted that on his helmet?
We were this close to getting
So close.
Biggs. Why can't we just do, it could have been Wedge and Biggs, or Wedge, Hobby, and Biggs. Like, have them all there.
Well, Hobby is in one of the episodes.
Hobby is in the same episode with Wedge.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I'm like, why can't we do Biggs?
Just take it as maybe they're saving it for something even better.
I think they talked about how basically the deleted scenes that we see from A New Hope, that they were treating that as, George set this up, so Biggs probably defected closer to the Battle of Yavin than several years before. So I get it.
Maybe they
get
thought,
it, but come on. Oh, come on. So close.
Maybe they thought, you know what? This animation just can't do the mustache justice. We have to wait.
They tried and they just, okay, I'll buy that. That'll be my headcanon for now.
Okay. But I like that episode because you get to see how far they're willing to go to save Wedge and bring him into the rebellion.
Yeah, just like 3 people. It does show kind of the desperation of the rebellion at that point. They're like, we're running out of pilots, and so we're going to go save these 3.
And turns out that was a great idea because Wedge is a good one to have around.
Exactly.
He makes some good decisions in the future.
Yeah, he survives 2 Death Star runs. He leads Rogue and Red Squadron at some point. Like, good job.
Yeah.
Just goes to show, like, every person matters in the rebellion. That's also the first episode where we don't get it confirmed that Callus is Fulcrum, but you're basically like, okay, he probably is. First of all, that's when we hear his, like, jarbled transmission.
Right.
And I'm like, knowing that it's Callus, I'm shocked I didn't figure it out. I think I saw people figuring it out online, but it sounds just like him.
I don't know that I would have figured it out, but I actively try not to figure stuff like that out. So.
Right. But then at the end of the episode, he helps Sabine and Wedge and Hobby escape. He basically looks the other way, and then he's like, tell Zeb we're even.
Right.
But
also give him a kiss.
give him a hug for me. Give him this note.
A little smooch.
Do you like me? Yes, no, maybe. Also, I'm Fulcrum. Let's see. There's also the TIE Defender is in this season, which that was another big deal for me. How did you feel about that?
We talked about that in the episode where it showed up because I was like, that's the big deal ship?
The big deal ship?
I was like, well, why is it such a big deal? And you were like, it has shields. It has 3 wings.
Look at it, Molly.
And I was like,
look how scary that is.
Wow.
Just one of those Legends ships that I love to see come back. And now we're getting the E-Wing and Ahsoka. Very exciting times for old ship fans.
Yeah. I mean, great that they have shields. That does make them scarier, but they just stuck another wing on there.
Well, it's interesting that, and they inverted it. It's interesting that they used the TIE Defender as this big threat to the rebellion and their starfighters, and it gives Star Wars Rebels bigger stakes. Having Thrawn in the story, having him developing the TIE Defender, those are 2 things that really would have altered the course of the war, I think. And we're not going to get to the solution to that until season 4, but it does, to me, make Star Wars Rebels and the Ghost Crew seem like, oh, they actually did make some huge contributions to the rebellion winning.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the Ghosts of Geonosis episodes, because that was another, in season 2 we talked about how fun it was to have the Star Wars Rebels episode with Finn Rao in it, and that same day the comic came out. This was just fun timing, where I think these were the first 2 episodes that released after Rogue One. So 2016 was the first half of Star Wars Rebels Season 3. Then we saw Rogue One, and like the Ghost was there, and Chopper was in it, and you could hear General Syndulla on the intercom. We met Saw Gerrera, and then like a month later, when Star Wars Rebels returned, we got to watch The Ghost of Geonosis.
Yeah. And Saw is kind of scary in this episode. You can see the cracks forming for sure.
I like how they handled him. First, I love that Forrest Whitaker, this was the first time he voiced him, and Forrest keeps coming back to play Saw. I think he really likes the character.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Saw at first seems like a really capable warrior, Ezra looks up to him, Rex is like, oh yeah, great guy, I knew him from the Clone Wars, and then everyone sees him devolving.
Yeah. Kind of starting to lose it a little bit.
Yeah.
We also need to address the elephant in the room.
I was going to bring this up later, but you can do it now for things that don't work for us.
Yeah, the name that Ezra comes up with for the Geonosian character in this one is not the best.
No, I remember saying that in my review for the episode when it came out, where Ezra's like, I'm going to call you Click Clack. And it's like, that might have just been that Geonosian saying hello, and you're just like, I'm gonna name you after the noises you make.
Yeah, and granted, that language, the Geonosian language, is very different from basic, and so no one else knows the language, so they're just doing the best they can.
They're just doing their best, but that never seemed good to me.
Could have named him Greg or something. I don't know.
Or Geo or something like
yeah.
Geo the Geonosian, I don't know. But yeah, but I do really like that episode for another comic connection, which we learn about
the egg.
The Geonosian egg that is being protected. And that tied back into the Darth Vader comics from 2015, I believe. And we saw a Geonosian queen there, and I think Pablo Hidalgo confirmed that was kind of something they seeded in the comics because they knew it was coming at some point in Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
Because animation works so far ahead that they were like, oh, let's show the end of this story.
Yeah.
The downside of that is that the end of the story is very sad. That Geonosian queen does survive, and then Darth Vader eventually kills it. So hopefully there's another Geonosian egg around there somewhere.
They can get away with sad endings like that in the comic books, I feel like, rather than the shows and stuff. But yeah, this episode was cool because we get to see kind of like further into how the Geonosians were wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And poor Greg, who is that's gonna be my name for him going forward. Poor Greg was trying to tell them about the Death Star, and they're just being dummies about it.
Yeah, it's a fun connection to Rogue One and the Death Star and everything that we learned. And yeah, he's just like drawing the same thing over and over, and he's like my name's not Click Clack. Also, you're all idiots.
Yeah, they think it's the egg, and then they think it's the big round like explosives that they find out, or the poisonous gas.
Yeah, the poison gas.
And he's like, no.
He's like, whatever, I'm taking my egg, I'm going in my hole.
Goodbye.
You all go away.
Please leave.
Moving on, we got to talk about the Darksaber, and it's 3 main episodes this season, which are so good.
Yeah.
I know you loved Visions and Voices. That's the one with the Night Sisters, the Night Sister ghosts in it.
Yeah. Any spooky stuff is gonna definitely perk up my attention, and getting to go back to Dathomir and see Maul again. He's in it, right?
Yeah, Maul brings Ezra to Dathomir.
Right. And then they go to this like Night Sister magic stone or something.
Yeah, like this altar.
It was really cool to see all the Night Sister ghosts pop out and like
possessing Sabine
people.
And Kanan.
Right. Like that could have turned out way worse.
I love Maul being like, come run, we have to make it to the entrance and then we can help your friends. And then they make it out. He's like, I'm just kidding. Like, good luck.
Okay, bye.
But, Maul is a character that I felt like was in more of this season, but really it's just 3 episodes. But he's such a commanding presence that he had the Holocrons of Fate, Visions and Voices, and Twin Sons. I think that was it.
Yeah.
But that's when Sabine finds the Darksaber, and then Trials of the Darksaber is widely considered to be one of the best episodes of the series, which is awesome. It's the first episode that really gave us the Darksaber lore that we're so familiar with now.
Mm-hmm.
Up until that point, it was just like, this is a Mandalorian weapon that was created, and then the Jedi took it and hid it in the Jedi Temple until we liberated it again. But to learn it was from Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian Jedi, and it was this symbol of Mandalorian power, and how much that has spiraled out since then into The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett is really fun. And it all came from this one little like cool animated segment.
Yeah.
The whole thing's animated, but it was a specially animated
It was like
thing.
an animated segment within an animated show.
Yeah.
It was cool. And yeah, this is a great episode for Sabine. We get to dive a little bit deeper into her trauma, and she gets to work some stuff out. And we get a ton of just cool like lightsaber lore between her and Kanan, like training and stuff.
Again, stuff that has come back up in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, where Din feels that the weapon is heavy, and Sabine is like, it feels heavy at first, and then Kanan's like, as you bond with the blade and the crystal, it'll be lighter. And yeah, lots of little like fun Star Wars nuggets of information dropped, but on top of a really fantastic story about Sabine and coming to terms with her family that like abandoned her. We get her full story. I think this is at least the first episode where I remember hearing Sabine's musical theme, which then pops up again and again, and it just sounds so great. And then we immediately go from there into the Legacy of Mandalore, where she goes back to her family. And that one ends and she stays behind, and you were like, wait, hold on.
I was like, I didn't remember that. I was like, she's just with them now, and she's like, all right, good luck, everyone. I'm needed here. I was like, no, that's not cool.
Yeah, that's something that surprised me as well. I was like, is she just not in the show anymore? And then, of course, she comes back a little bit later. And that I feel like that is going to keep happening in Star Wars, where it happened in Resistance as well. Like a character left, and I'm like, okay, they'll be back. They're pulling a Sabine on us.
But yeah, all of these Darksaber related episodes and Sabine centric episodes are great because Star Wars is all about digging deeper into family trauma. So it just feels right.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Sabine, who has created this found family, then having to go and confront her actual family,
right,
and everything that comes with it. One of the biggest moments that we need to talk about from this whole series is the episode Secret Cargo and the delivery of Mon Mothma to Dantooine, and the speech that she gives, which I'm like, are we gonna see this again in season 2 of Andor? Because it feels like just one of the biggest moments for Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
And are we going to see her speech in the Senate and then a reference to what happened at Dantooine? Or I'm very curious to see how they cover this, if they do at all.
I would love to see it happen in Andor, her Senate speech.
It's interesting because we can just lump this into a discussion of Twin Suns, because also phenomenal episode. But a lot of people have said now that Disney Plus is a thing, they're like, kind of wish we got to see that in live action. I don't know. How do you feel about Star Wars Rebels telling these really big, important stories that's probably going to be the definitive version? Does that bother you at all?
I'm fine with it because they can get away with more bigger and like just, I don't know, more Star Wars-y stuff in animation than they can in live action, I think. They're getting better and better at it, but I just think they can get away with more in an animated show.
It doesn't bother me as someone who, I mean, we just watch everything. So animated live action, it doesn't bug me. And it makes me hopeful that people who just watch live action, that if they don't, I want to see it. I want to see Mothma's speech in Andor, but if they don't do it, I'm like, well, we already have it. And hopefully people will go watch it themselves. Also, for Twin Suns, I think it might have been even weirder to have that fight in live action.
Well, yeah.
Just the way that it ends.
They would have to have gotten Ray Park to come back, and then how do we get Sam Witwer's voice with like mixed into that, and
I don't think that's a problem.
I don't know. It just would have felt weird, maybe.
I wonder if there would have been a bigger, like, when the fight happened and it's so quick.
Yeah.
I remember people being like a little let down by it. I think now people have realized what it's about, and I don't see any backlash against it anymore. But if it were in the last episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series or something and that was the fight, I wonder what the reaction would have been. I don't know that live action fans who showed up to watch that, I'm just curious to see if they would have handled it well.
It would have been hard to fit that day into the timeline of Obi-Wan.
I know. I'm just saying if it were in any live action production.
Right. I don't know. I like the way that it was done. I like that it was quick.
I love that it was quick.
You know, and it shows just how desperate Maul was. He's using the same moves that he used to kill Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan knows that. Obi-Wan's smart. He's had time to reflect and, I guess, train, but he's just smarter and quicker than Maul in that moment. And you can see once Maul is defeated, he has been ready to give up.
He's like, okay.
He has been ready to give all this up, and he immediately like switches to like asking about the Chosen One and how it'll set them free.
He's still like, he will avenge us. Like, his thoughts are still on vengeance.
But yeah.
But he does seem to have found some level of peace.
Yeah.
Like, he's not mad at Kenobi in his final moments.
That moment is so, like, that I think is my favorite episode of the season, just because of that whole moment. It's so good. And
I remember watching it for the first time, being really, they did a good job of teasing it going into the episode, and then the buildup of the fight is very intense as they're swapping their stances and everything. And I know Sam Witwer has talked through all of the Obi-Wan does the classic stance, and then he sees Maul get ready and he switches to the Qui-Gon stance to goad Maul into that same attack. And
then he eventually goes to like his stance that
I think he does this
Vader.
And then he does kind of
this and then that.
Yeah, the final stance he settles on is Qui-Gon's, so that he can convince Maul to try to do the same thing, which is just the whole thing. Maul hasn't grown. He is still all about vengeance. Even when he's dying, he's thinking about vengeance. But I do love their final conversation.
And you can tell Obi-Wan just feels sorry for him. And
he didn't want to fight. He was just like, I'm just going to stand here until Luke is mentioned. And he's like, well, now I have to defend Luke. Now it's different. But the way he like holds him and like closes his eyes is like kind of a sweet moment. And he gives him, according to From a Certain Point of View, the book, he gives Maul a Jedi burial, a funeral pyre. It's not like he just drops him in the desert and leaves him. But yeah, that moment, how quick the fight is, I always loved it. Like, I was surprised, but in a good way. I thought it was cool. Yeah, I think the last episode to talk about is the 2-part finale, 0 Hour. Yeah, we haven't really talked about the Bendu much. But the Bendu has a big moment in the finale. And the Bendu's another character that I remember. I'm like, this is the Bendu season, and he's in like 3 or 4 episodes. He's not in the show a ton. Yeah. Which I think is good. Like, use the weird Star Wars mystical stuff sparingly, but they used it enough so that I was like, okay, yeah, I remember him well. I love the moment where Kanan goes to get help from the Bendu, and he's like, "What? Please help!" And Bendu's like, "No, I don't want to." Yeah, another illustration of how choosing to be the one in the middle doesn't help anything. If anything, it hurts the light side. Yeah, you're like, nah, I don't get involved in this kind of stuff. It's kind of like the Ints. Really, that's what it's making me think of the Ints being like, we have no one, we're not on any side because no one is on our side, and then realizing that if you don't take a side, the powers of evil are going to cut your trees down. Yeah, they're gonna come for you eventually. But they're also like,
we got to make sure this is worthwhile for all of us to like get up and go do something.
Yeah. But I like the way that Kanan basically spurred him into action by just making him angry and unleashing that storm and everything.
Yeah.
And like he's attacking anything and anyone. He's just like, get off my planet.
Yeah. Get off my lawn. Angry man is in clouds.
Yeah, angry man yells from cloud. What do you think we're going to see from the Bindu in the future, if anything at all?
I don't know, because not too long ago, I was thinking it would be cool to see the Bindu pop up in like the High Republic, because a being like that could be around at any point in Star Wars history. So it'd be cool to go way, way back in time and see him.
I also can't tell if he is like bound to that planet. I don't think he is. He seems bigger and more mystical than that, but he does call Atollon like, you brought war to my world. So I'm like, does he just chosen to live here? Would he appear at another planet and look different? Because he definitely seemed to take on the form of Atollon's flora.
Yeah, he could have just been saying my world, like, get off my lawn.
Yeah, this is just where I've chosen to live for now.
And it goes along with him choosing to be in the middle. You know, he's choosing to like be stagnant and like not pout, but like also not help.
Right.
Things.
Well, I think that's a good point. He does say something along the lines of like, do you think it was a mistake that this place was so hard to find? Like, I'm just trying to hide and live out my life. So yeah, it's actually very similar to Luke in The Last Jedi, where he says something similar. Like, do you think it's a mistake I came to the most unfindable planet in the galaxy?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I do think /hope we see more from the Bindu at some point in the future of the timeline, past, whatever. I think he's interesting.
If anyone's gonna bring the Bindu back, it'll be Dave at some point in Ahsoka maybe, or another spin-off show. I don't know, but we need to know a little bit more about him as a being. Like, a lot of people were like, is he dead? Because he got shot out of the sky, but I don't think he's dead. I don't think you can necessarily kill him.
He got shot out of the sky, and then Thrawn shot at him, but he like disappears, and you just hear him laughing. So
yeah,
the Bindu is not dead.
Yeah.
And I feel like he can change his appearance. Like, he might always look a bit like an ox gorilla, but he can turn into a storm. He can put those weird mushroom antlers on his head, or whatever he looks like from Atollon.
It would be interesting if sometime in the future we got to see the Bindu interact with Thrawn. Well,
in his interaction in this season, I think it's interesting that he gives that prophecy, like, I see your failure, your defeat,
demise
surrounding you like a mini cold arms or something. And then in season 4, we see that play out. But I'm really curious to know if that prophecy will play out again. I think that would be cool if Thrawn's final defeat had some metaphorical way that it could link back to that prophecy.
The White Walkers are coming.
Yeah, just a bunch of White Walkers hugging to death. But yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the season. So you already talked about your favorite episode. It was Twin Suns, you think?
I think so.
I think my favorite episode was Through Imperial Eyes. I know Trials of the Darksaber is probably the best one of the season, or it's widely celebrated, but I really loved the cat and mouse game in Through Imperial Eyes. I loved seeing Thrawn and his elements. That's like the closest to book Thrawn I feel like the show got, where he is outsmarting everyone and he's using art to do it. Just feeling perfect Thrawn energy from him.
He's in his Thrawn era.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see if that can translate into Ahsoka and beyond in future series and stories. And just, I want to see that, but even more heightened, because I do think they toned him down a bit for animation just to make his strategies and everything a little bit simpler. But that was really, really good.
Yeah, and like all the stuff with callous towards the end when we find out definitely that he is Fulcrum, and when Thrawn figures it out, that's great. Like, that's a great moment too, when all that kind of shifts, and then we get hot callous.
Right.
So
That's, if you strike me down, you'll only make me hotter. For other notable moments, I wanted to bring up AP5 singing, because I know you love that.
yeah, he gets like shot out into space, and then there are these little like space
Nibres, I think they're called.
Nibre. He just like has this existential moment when he's floating out there that he starts singing, and I was like,
He's like, I'm alone, but I'm not sad. I'm happy about it.
Yeah. Well, he's happy about it because he's not surrounded by idiots anymore.
And then when he sees his rescue and he's like, no, 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 no. And then the perfect comedic beat of the ship swallowing him up, and you hear that clang.
No, 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 go away. I was so happy.
Yeah.
As he hits the other wall.
That had to have been a rough landing for him, because the ship comes in not that slowly, and he's just kind of like floating real slowly, and he just ends up in the ship.
So good. And he's just saying, I was so happy out there. I didn't want to come back. Oh, AP5. Is there anything in the season that didn't work well for you?
I don't think so, other than Greg and his other name.
Uh-huh. I already talked about the one Kathu job, where I'm still just like, on that episode. I did want to talk about Ezra and the holocron, because the trailer for that, the end of season 2 made me think that was going to be a struggle for Ezra throughout the season, and it's really over in the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, the first episode really gets into it, where you see him tapping into something maybe a little dark to fight.
I think they sufficiently went dark with him. Him using the Force to compel the ATDP driver to open fire on stormtroopers and then walk himself off a cliff is dark.
It was dope, but it was dark.
But there are other lines where Hondo says, like, is that really Ezra? And Sabine's like, most of the time. And you get this sense that there was just more to see from that. And I feel like we just got the end of his dabble with darkness. And I think we talked about this last time. I just like to see some of this stuff instead of hear about it. But I think that they did enough covering it. It's just something I could have stood to see more of.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing we have left to discuss is the chopper body count.
Ooh.
Okay, so last season we were in the 4,000s. How many people or droids or beings do you think Chopper killed this time?
Just in this season?
Yes, just in this season.
See, I can never remember if he has just taken out a whole ship. So I'm going to guess that it's more than 4,000.
It's not this time.
Okay.
He does not destroy an entire ship full of people that I saw. I only wrote down 4 this time.
Oh.
Right. I think he destroys one TIE fighter, maybe a droid or maybe a stormtrooper on its own. He does blow up the entire Hera household, the Syndulla household.
Okay.
This is where things get...
I think there were a couple people in there.
There were definitely 2 that we saw just straight up destroyed and blown up. So I only put it on 4 confirmed, but there are probably more people inside the house. So I have to admit, my number is probably not correct. And I also really want to point out that as he was planting the bombs, he was giggling gleefully. Like he's...
Did it say that in the subtitles?
I think it did say giggling or something. Like he's rolling around on his one wheel, just like joyfully throwing bombs on the walls.
He did have... That was a magical moment for him.
Yeah, that was funny. I really wonder what they're going to do with him in Ahsoka, how far they're going to lean into... Are we going to see him rolling on his one middle wheel, like to go real fast?
So.
Is he going to be wielding 2 blasters at the same time? Like that's something that is goofy, but they can pull it off in animation. I don't know if it would look as good in live action.
I think we'll see him hitting a lot of people, like
that I can see.
Giving him a good smack, and then people can smack him back. We kept talking about how every time he gets hit or falls down. He just sounds like an empty metal bucket, and I've been calling him Chaos Bucket.
That's interesting too, is that in the show you can have people just wailing on Chopper with a wrench. When you've built the puppet and the prop, no one's going to want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, they could do it in CG, but I wonder...
They've made him out of steel.
I wonder if we're going to see Zeb, like, kick him over or anything. It'll be interesting to see all this stuff get translated, but
yeah.
I think that'll bring us to the end of our Season 3 discussion, so only one more season to go, and we'll talk about that next week.
This feels like it went by so quickly.
It did. We really did blow through Season 3.
It's too good not to.
I think we watched it in like 3 sittings, and just like you said, there were a ton of bangers. Very good season.
Yeah, A+.
Well, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel,
Follow us on Twitter.
or whatever Twitter's calling itself now.
X? Don't know how much longer we'll do that, but I'm going to keep calling
Follow
it
us on socials. We're on
Twitter.
social places.
We're on Twitter. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Threads and Instagram and Facebook.
Too many places. This is too many things.
Well, the more the merrier.
I get no. What? Just look up Star Wars Explained on whatever social media you care about today.
Yeah.
And consider checking out our Patreon page, which is pretty cool. That's always, Patreon's always cool.
Always.
As always, thank you all for watching, and may the Force be with you.